of Amud Beis, Amud Alf, and the Gemara in the Mishnah says, going back to the Mishnah, the Gemara says that Rabbi Kiva, who had his shita about the different types of kishuf, was really quoting from Rabbi Yeshua, and that is, "But a shnaim loitin kishuim." If it only looks like he took it, like he gathered the kishuim, but he didn't really gather them, then he's potter, because that's achizas einayim. But if he actually gathered all of the kishuim with kishuv, that is a malacha. That's a mechashev deraisa, and that's where there'll be a chiv skila. So, Frank the Gemara, are you telling me that Rabbi Kiva learned all this about the ma'aseh shofim of kishuim from Rabbi Yeshua? Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yeshua Gvirla? Well, Tanya, we learned a story. In the end of the story, we're going to find out that, in fact, you know who taught Rabbi Kiva all about the kitchuf with kishuim? It was Rabbi Eliezer. And the Gemara relates the story of how Rabbi Eliezer was nifter.
Amen.
Thank you very much. So, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Kiva and his friends went to visit him. Now, Rabbi Eliezer was in Chayrim still because of the Tanur, because of that Tanur, it was a machlokes, if it was Tanur or Tar. There was different opinions that Rabbi Eliezer took that the Hamoin Am, the Roiv didn't agree with, and he was put into Chayrim because he didn't want to give in to the Roiv. So what happened was, Hu Yoshev B'Kinuch Shaloi, he was sitting under some type of canopy. The Heim Yoshev B'Traklin Shaloi, they were sitting in this house, but not under his canopy. They were a little bit further away. It was Friday when they came to visit him. And being that it was Friday afternoon, getting close to Shabbos, Horkanus, the son of Rabbi Eliezer, wanted to take off his father's tefillin, so he shouldn't be wearing his tefillin for Shabbos. The Kasava, Rashi says, Shabbos lavs man tefillinu. So therefore, he shouldn't really be wearing them. What happened was Garaboy. Rabbi Eliezer got upset with Horkanus that Horkanus wanted to take off his tefillin. The Yotze b'Nezifa, and Horkanus left like in a little bit of a humiliation. His father said, "What are you bothering me here?" Amar lahen lechaverim. So Horkanus told the chaverim of Rabbi Eliezer, meaning Rabbi Kiva and Chaverov, "Kivadumani, it seems shedaita sholaba nitrafa. My father must be very close to death, and because of that, he's not thinking clearly." Zotrashi v'karvu lamos shilu ha'isdaiti misheves ha'yichayot tefillin. If he was clear, he would also want to take off his tefillin before Shabbos. Amar lahen. So Rabbi Eliezer said, "No, I know exactly what I'm doing." And there's a shayla how to read this. So if you read it without the word that the Bach takes out or puts in, daitoi v'das imo nitrafa. You know who's confused? My son Horkanus, as well as his mother. Why? Because it's right before Shabbos, and they haven't yet been matm in the chamen. They haven't yet put the food that needs to be kept warm in the oven, and she hadn't lighted neiros, which involved much more severe malachas. So heichmanich iser skila, iser shvus, or they're busy with a problem of tefillin. They have much more important things to tend to, like hadlokas neiros and like hatmona. So what is the iser skila? So Rashi hadlokas and there batmonas chamen, and what are they busy with? The meniach tefillin b'Shabbos ain't kan isim malacha. V'afilu yotzav l'shus harabim to derech malbashu v'tachshitin hu loy b'chol. So it wasn't such a big deal, and you were busy with a big deal. So there's a couple of problems over here. Because first of all, if you hold havora l'chalak yotzes, you're okay. But if you hold havora l'lav yotzes, havora isn't either Mr. Skila. But I guess we'll hold havora l'chalak yotzes. But what about hatamana? Hatamana is only usher because of Xera, you might be machta b'gecholim. So it's only Xera. So what was the problem? So the Mefarshim say there are those who learn that about there was a Xera that's due to something that could come to an Isser Daraisa, we treat it like an Isser Daraisa. Unlike taking off his tefillin, which could never have come to an Isser Daraisa, because even if he carried it b'chutz, Rashi says it's derech mamash. Okay, Zok Gemara Kivin Shiroch Chachamim Shadaitim Yishavas Alav. So once they saw that Rabbi Eliezer has clarity, so now they know he's not well, but they wanted to learn some Torah from him. Nichnazu, they pulled in a little bit closer. V'yoshvu lefon of Meirachak Dalan Amos, but they still stayed 4 amos away. Why did they stay 4 amos away? Dr. Rashi, because Rabbi Eliezer wasn't chayim. Shebarchu b'machloikis barchu is lashon saginor. They put him into chayim b'machloikis tanur shalachnoi b'bav mitzvah. So what happened? Amalei, he asked him, Lama Bossam, you haven't come to see me in years. Now suddenly you woke up, you want to come visit me? What's going on over here? Amalei, they told him back, what do you mean? Lil my Torah banu, we want to learn Torah from you. Amalei v'adachshav Lama Bossam. So where were you until now? Amalei, they didn't want to tell him that you're in chayim. It's like demeaning. So they said, we didn't have time. Amar lehen, so he said, very sharp Lashon, Timiani, I would be surprised im yamusu misas atzman, if you die a natural death. You're all going to die a very severe death, not a natural death. It's a little bit harsh. Amar lo Rabbi Akiva, what's that?
Middle thing? I don't understand. If it's also to go to him when he's in
Why did they tell him, you could be berichak abamas? I guess they realized he's getting sick, so let's chop around and learn what we could. They never want to learn from Kajun, but now that he's dying, they figured let's chop around whatever we could, and we'll do it in the way where we could. So Amar Rabbi Akiva, Shalima, what will be my misa? What's going to be my misa? Amar he told Rabbi Akiva, Shalach kasher mishalahen. Your misa is going to be the worst. Why is your misa going to be the worst? Zokt Rashi, mepnei shalibech pasuach kulam. Your heart is open like a big hall. The ilu shamashtani. If you would have spent more time with me to learn from me, oh, you could have learned so much more. So they're money you starker because you could have benefited so much more from being mishamish. Rabbi Eliezer not al shtei zoyaisav. Rabbi Eliezer took his 2 arms, the nichan and libay, and he put him on his heart. And Amar he said, "Oy lachem shtei zoyaisai. Woe are my 2 arms. Shehein kishtei sifrei Torah sheniglolim. They're like 2 wrapped up sifrei Torah." As Rashi says, "Kishagoyim sifrei Torah, the aksav mechusa. Kach tis aleim v'tiskasa Torah shebelibi kishaamos levi shaloshim shuni v'lomdu mimenu." Since nobody learned from me, all of my Torah remains concealed because nobody had a chance to ever learn from me. Harba Torah lemaditi. I learned a lot of Torah in my life. V'harba Torah limaditi, and I taught a lot of Torah in my life. Harba Torah lemaditi v'loy chasarti meraboisa afilu kekelev hamalakik minayam. As much Torah as I learned from my Rebbeim. If you would compare it, to the amount of water that a dog could lick up from the yam. Not even a fraction of a fraction of what was available. And who didn't harba Torah limaditi, I did teach a lot of Torah, but v'lochesruni talmidai ela kemecha b'shveiferes. You know how much Torah they got out of me relative to how much was available? Kemecha b'shveiferes, as Rashi shveiferes, konish and noisnebekol. It's like a mascara type of a thing where there's like a stick that goes into a container. I still don't know how mascara works. We were all children once to play with my mother's makeup. So kisam shalaitz or shal kesef. So that little bit compared to the whole reservoir is what people got from me. And not only that, I learned 300 halachas in the halacha of Marish Nagoyim. And nobody asked me anything about it. 3,000 halachas in the Tias Keshuin in the halacha of Kishif of the Tias Keshuin, which is exactly the subject that Rabbi Akiva claims he learned from Rabbi Yeshua. You know who did learn the halacha of Kishun and the Kishuf Kishun from me? Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef. And here's the story. Pamachas anivahu mahalchin hayinu b'derech. Amali told me, Rabbi, lamdeini b'netias ketushin. Kishun. Teach me about the halachas of Kishuf when it comes to Kishun. Amarti davar echad. I said that word. Nismala kol asada kishun. The whole field got filled up with kishun. So he taught him with kishuf how you would fill up a field with kishun. Amli Rebbe, limadatani nitiyosad. You taught me how they're planted. Now limadatani akirosad. Amarti davar echad. And this kapsu kula on the makam echad. So you see clearly that who taught Rabbi Kiva the halacha of the kishuf when it comes to kishun, it was Rabbi Eliezer. That's going to be the Gemara's kasha. But there was more. Amalei asked him, Hakador. Hakador is like a football or a basketball, but it wasn't filled with air, it was filled with stuffing. So the question is that a keli? Since you can, technically the ball can hold something, but it can't really hold anything because it's already stuffed fully with stuffing. So is that called a keli? The amos. An amos is a form of a shoe that the shoemaker would construct shoes on this form. The kameya. Again, the amos is also a similar item. It's leather walls that's fully stuffed. So therefore you can't get anything else into it. Imus, Rashi says, was made out of leather, like a shoe. No, that was imus. And then there was the kameya shalor. It's also filled inside. It would be hung on someone's neck. Utsur hamargolius, which Rashi says, Torfin hamargolius bar. They would wrap the jewel in hide. The tail noise of tzavar behema, and they would put it into the tzavar behema refuah. Umishkoilas katana. Mishkoilas katana, Rashi says, is in unkiya she'oisin me'feres. It's something of a hook. Shouldn't be great. Big weights ain't there's some type of weight. It was something that was used in the weighing activity. So he wants to know what is it. What's Allah? Amalan hein tmein. They're all tamei, which is he had a machlokes with the Rabbanan about all these things. And they said these items are not makabel tumah because they don't have a base kibble because the base kibble is stuffed. And he always maintained that they're tamei. So he said, I did not back down. I still maintain my position that they're tamei. Now the second child that they had is, what if they became tamei? How did they become tamei? According to Rabbanan, because they were torn open and there was a little stuffing missing. So now it is a base kibble. So what if it became tamei? When you're matar, when you're toiveling them, do you have to take out the stuffing completely so the water comes in contact with the whole inside, or can you toivel it with the stuffing? Zogt, the Chacham held you have to take all the stuffing out, but Rabbi Eliezer held no, you could be toivel it with the stuffing. The Tairasim B'Mashay, you could toivel them the way they are. Again, he's maintaining he still disagrees with the Chacham. Minal shal gabay amos. What about a shoe that was on the amos? Meaning it was basically finished, was basically completed, but it still has to be removed from this form. Mao, is this considered a completed shoe as a makabel tumah or not? Amalan hu tahor, it is tahor. And right then when he said tahor, the yatsa nishmasay b'tahira. Rabbi Eliezer neshama left his body when he was uttering the word tahor. So Amud Rabbi Yeshua al Raklav. Rabbi Yeshua jumped up right away. The Amar, and he said, Hutar had nether, Hutar another. Meaning he was mater the chayrim that was on Rabbi Eliezer. It says you're allowed to be mater the chayrim after he dies, Rashi says. No, it wasn't Rashi, somebody else said. But they were mater the chayrim. Now they have to bury him. The Motzai Shabbos, they were carrying the body from Kisri to Lud. What was it doing in Kisri? Maybe because Rabbi Eliezer was seeking medical attention there, because really Rabbi Eliezer was from Lud. So on the way, Pagabai Rabbi Kiva, Ben Kisri to Lud. The Bach changes the gears, or the Tziyonim changed the gears. So on the way, taking the body, they met Rabbi Kiva between Kisri and Lud. Hayamaka b'Bsara, he was hitting his skin, Achadami Shoishes Lawrence. The Toshis asks, you're not allowed to be sorry to Tzaretas on a mace. So the Toshis says he wasn't doing it for the mace. He was doing it because of the Torah that he lost. That you're allowed to do it for. Pasach Allah B'Shur. So Pasach Allah B'Shur, Rashi says that's what they used to do by the Levi, they used to make rows. But Pasach Allah B'Shur show you Eisen Shura Svivais Hamita LaHesped. He'd make rows around the meat of our hesped. V'yamar Avi Rechav Yisrael Parasha, which is the same thing that Elisha Navi said when Eliyahu Navi's body flew up to Shemaim. He said, Harba Mois Yeshli, I have so much money, and I don't have a bank to put it into. And Rashi says, what it means is that there's so much Torah that I need to learn. There's so many questions I need to ask, but now I no longer have somebody to ask. So that's the end of the story. But what we deduce from the story is who taught Rabbi Kiva about the halachas of Kishiv relative to Kishun. Amar Rabbi Eliezer Gomer. Zaktamar, you're right. Gomer Rabbi Eliezer. He did learn it from Rabbi Eliezer, but V'lo Savra, he didn't have it clear. It was a complicated inyan, and although Rabbi Eliezer taught him, he wasn't clear in it. And therefore, Hadar Gomer Rabbi Yeshua. The Asbernelli and Rabbi Yeshua explained it to him. So, Zok Gemara, it's not true that the Mishnah says that Rabbi Kiva learned it from Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabbi Kiva is quoting from Rabbi Yeshua, because even though he learned it from Rabbi Eliezer, he only got clarity from Rabbi Yeshua. How would Rabbi Eliezer do Kishiv? He was doing actual Kishiv. How are you allowed to do Kishiv? But not Tana Oisa, Mais is Chayiv. Zok Gemara, L'Islam Mitshani. A Rebbe is allowed to teach his Talmidim what Kishiv is, because they have to paskin on it. So they need to know exactly what it is. So for the purposes of demonstrating it, it would be allowed. You're not allowed to learn these things to do them as a practice. So that you'll be able to understand what it is, and then you'll be able to pass with it. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we finished the fourth parak of Sanhedrin. Now it's very interesting that the next parak delves into Ben Sarim Moyer, because Ben Sarim Moyer was merely one of them on the list that gets skila. So wouldn't it make more sense just to continue on with the same parak? Because that's what we're doing. We're going through the Mishnah that listed off all of the Niskolim one by one. So Ben Sarim Moyer is just another one of the Niskolim. Why would it get its own parak? So I think Tosfos says, somebody says, let's see if Tosfos says, no, Tosfos doesn't say. So one of the other Rishonim say, the reason why is because we're going to see that Ben Sarim Moyer is very involved with many halachas, so the Tana thought that we should give it its own parak, because it's going to be much more involved. It's not like a small Mishnah like we've been having. So a Mishnah with small Gemara, simple stuff, this is going to be more involved. Zok Gemara, Ben Sarim Moyer. Me'emasai nasa Ben Sarim Moyer. What is the minimum age to be a Ben Sarim Moyer? Zok Gemara, Mishiyavi Shtei Cyrus. From the point that he has 2 Cyrus below the belt. But there's a maximum age. Yaakov until there's a lot of hair down there, and the Gemara is actually going to get very detailed into exactly where the hair has to be down there and how much it has to be. We'll get into that later. It doesn't mean his beard, because at that age he might not even have a beard at all. When they called it a beard, it's because they wanted to speak in a fine way, as the speaker said yesterday, in a princely fashion. Shenemar, it says ki ish ben. Okay, ben v'loy bas. This halacha ben Sarim Moyer does not apply to a bas. Ben v'loy ish cotton. Ben v'loy ish. A ben and not an ish, meaning an ish who is completely a gadol, which Rashi says v'zeh misha hikif zokein ishu. He's an adultery. Cotton is potter, and the reason why a cotton is potter is because a cotton b'chalal didn't come to mitzvahs yet. So therefore, there is no bin Sarim Moyer by cotton. Zok tahilig Rashi shenemar ben v'loish v'zeh mishahikiv zokan issue v'yavagav the ben mikat nusay kari ben. Even when he's a minor, even before he's called a ben. So ben doesn't exclude a cotton. Zok Rashi and Echanami. We don't have a limit from the pasuk to tell us that a ben is potter, a cotton is potter. Rather, the cotton potter shaloi balach mitzvahs. There's a general rule that a cotton is not mechuyev mitzvahs. The earliest that we could be mechayev a ben Sarim Moyer is only once he becomes a gadol with 2 Cyrus. He's called an ish. Every other mitzvah in the Torah, he's a complete ish. And here you told me he's not an ish until it's the small ziknai. Where do you get that from? Zok Rashi miu ki miatakra lam betchilas ishusoi kamamai. When the Torah is trying to limit the age of when someone could be a Ben Sarim Moyer, it's not excluding the younger years of his adulthood, meaning from when he sees two sires until he's in the small ziknai. That's the part that's included in the halachim and tzaramayr, and when he becomes a full ish, so to speak, that's when he can no longer be a ben tzaramayr. The Gemara is going to show us how he learns some psukim. Ben hasamach l'gevarasa shalish. So this kisiyal ish ben tzaramayr, kisiyal ish ben. When he's a ben, that's close to being an ish. So really, you can ask, it should say kisiya ben ish, because it's a ben right before it becomes an ish. Really, but the pasuk does say it's kisiya ish ben. So we're going to see exactly how the Gemara darshans this pasuk to extract the information that we need. Dr. Katan minolan the potter. How do we know that a katan is potter from being a ben tzaramayr? Minolan, the kataya time. What do you mean minolan? We learned the reason for it. Shaloi balach al mitzvahs. Doesn't the Mishnah say shaloi balach al mitzvahs? Visul, another kasha is heicha ashkechan the ona shakosav the hacha liboy kralam iftari. I don't understand. Where do you see that ever that a cotton would be mechuyev, that I need the Mishnah here to darshan v'loy cotton, ish v'loy cotton? Why do I need a pasuk to tell me that a ben tzaramayr is potter into cotton? You never find b'chala tarakula any time that a cotton is punished. Zok Gemara, this is what the Mishnah means. Anan hachi kamina. Atu ben tzaramayr umoyroi al chetin erik. A ben tzaramayr is not getting killed because he didn't have hair. It's a preventative measure. So oibazoi, maybe a cotton should also get killed as a preventative measure. Al shem soifei nerag. V'chivin al shem soifei nerag, maybe afilu kotanami. Maybe a cotton will kill. If you're killing the ben tzaramayr because you did a specific aveira. No. So there you'll say, if he's a cotton, he's not mechuyev. But if we're only killing him as a preventative measure, so a cotton as well, we should kill. V'oid, ben v'lo ish, cotton mashma. The second kasha is ben v'lo ish cotton mashma. Tamar v'dom arav, the amar kra v'chayil ish ben. That's the lashon of pasuk. V'chayil ish ben. So we learn it means ben hasamuch l'gvurasa shalish. It's a ben who's a gadol, but it's the first period up until he reaches the full gevura of an ish, and that would be from when he has shtei sayros until he has nismalazik. V'ad sheyakiv zakan atachtain. Tanya Rabchia, what exactly does it mean? Ad sheyakiv atara. Now we don't know what that means either. Ki asher avdimi amar, it means hakafas gid v'lo hakafas beitza. As long as the hair right around the gid, even though the hair doesn't extend to the sack where the beitzim are, that's enough hair that we consider unsmazik. So once he has hair all the way around, his gid will no longer kill him as a ben sayer umayr. Amar Chista, Katan Shahid. What if the father of the ben sayer umayr was a katan? Now there's going to be a whole discussion. Can a katan have children? But obviously this is under the assumption, Reb Chista is assuming that a katan can have a child. So what if the father of the ben sayer umayr was a katan? Now it doesn't mean he's a katan now. It means when the child was conceived, the father was a katan. Zok to Gemara, katan shahilad ein benoi nasa ben sayer umayr. This child can never become a ben sayer umayr. Shenemar ki yil ish ben. Leish ben, an adult has to have a son. That could become a ben sayer umayr. V'loy leben ben. But if it's only a child, that father's a child, there's no din ben sayer umayr. Frank Gemara, didn't we just use Kiyil Ish Ben to teach us that the period of time where he could become a Ben Sayer Umayr is from when he has two sires to the Nismal Ziknai? So how could we use it to tell us that if the Ben Sayer Umayr was fathered by a cotton, that he can't have it in Ben Sayer Umayr? That pasuk is already used to teach us something else. Frank Gemara, we already know Kiyil Ish Ben. We're using it to tell us the period of time in which the period of time and age of this child when he can become a ben sayer umayr. Zok Gemara, no, we're going to actually be able to extract two limudim from these words, because if it only meant to tell you Rabbi Yehuda's halacha, in kain lemekra kiyah ben leish, he could have kiyah ben leish when a ben becomes a man, also referring to that time, that transition period from where he saw two sires till Nismal Ziknai. But it flips it around. My kiyil ish ben. So since it's flipped around, Shemami no lechad Rav Chisda, we know Rav Chisda's halacha that only an issue as a child can be a b'ter meir, but if a child was conceived by a cotton, that child cannot be a b'ter meir. Frank, so once you're saying that, so how do you know the drasha of Yehuda Rav? Maybe the whole purpose of the whole drasha kiyil ish ben is only to tell you that a cotton cannot be the father of the b'ter meir. But we now know, now we've neutralized it, we don't know the halach anymore of what the age of a Mitzvah Meir is. Maybe the whole drush is only to tell you Reb Chisda's halach. So no, because there's still extra here. MK name a kra ben ish. It's just kiyah ben ish, when there will be the son of a father. And I would know that if the son was born to not an ish, but to a ben, he wouldn't be a B'ter Meir. What's that extra lamed? My li ish ben. So from the extra lamed, Shmami Natarti, we learn Rabbi Yehuda Rav's halacha as well, that the period of time that a child can become a B'ter Meir is from when he sees two sires until it's in small ziknai. Ufliga de Rabba, and this Rabbi Chisda would be arguing on Rabba because the Amar Rabba cotton ain't a moed. Rabba says a cotton cannot have children. Simple. A cotton cannot conceive children. Shenemar, it says, im ein leish goyel. Now this pasuk is talking about if someone steals money from his friend, and his friend demands that he pay him, and he denies it, and he makes a shvua, and then he's moida. In fact, I did steal. So there you have to bring a carbon. I think you bring a carbon oil of the. So not only do you have to give the money back, you also have to bring a carbon. Now, what if the ein leish goyel? What if there is no next? What if the person dies and there is no next of kin to pay back? Who are you supposed to pay to? So the pasuk says, you give the money to, you give it to the kohen. Frag the Gemara, what do you mean he doesn't have any relatives? Is there anybody in Klal who doesn't have a relation? We learned at the beginning of Bava Basra, you can go all the way back to Yaakov Avinu, and he can find a cousin that's related to him. So everybody has a next of kin. So Gemara, it must be talking about a ger who died, and if a ger dies, he might not have any relatives. But the problem is, how do you know the ger didn't father a child? Maybe the ger fathered a child that you didn't know about. How can you just give it to the kohen? You must have to look from every end of the world to see if this ger fathered a child. Zok to Gemara, v'yamar chmona ish at the torach lechazer alav im yesh legoylin of him lav, but cotton yet the yochel yet a torach lachzer alav because we do a shein legoylin. How could you possibly know that the ger doesn't have any children if the ger died while the ger was a cotton? If the ger died while the ger was a cotton, then you can be sure he has no children. So you see clearly from here that Rabbah holds that a cotton cannot have children, because otherwise you still have to be concerned maybe there is a next of kin. Now the problem here is, if we're speaking about a ger cotton, so then the shaila is, how did he have money? A cotton can't be kind of money. So how is the whole thing possible if a cotton does not have any money? So that is one of the shailas that the Rishonim discussed. You can see there's a long Tosfos over here. So let's just take a little peek and see what Tosfos says. Tosfos says, if he's a cotton, lahai cotton mamana. Where do you get money from? And if they were mezakim the money through somebody else, that's only and the cotton doesn't have shlichus. So that is one of the problems that we have over here. How did this ger get money? So there's a whole bunch of different svaras that are offered. I don't know which ones Tosfos say, but there's one svar that maybe he worked and he earned money. That's considered he had money, or he yarshened it from his father before he became a ger. There's that option. So there are ways that he could have been koina. He could have had money. Okay, so now we have a machlokes between Reb Chisda and Rabbah whether or not a cotton can conceive children. Zok to Gemara, Esvei Abaye, Ainli Ella Ish. I would only know an Ish. Now this is talking about a Shivcha Charufa. Kabi Shivcha Charufa Ksiv, the Ish Ki Yishkav, as Isha Shichvas Zera, the Shivcha Necharefes Leish, But v'hafta loy niftasa. Oichuv shel aditn lo bikaris tia lo yimasu ki loy kufas. So it says ish ein liyala ish ben tes shanim v'yoy mechad sheroy labia. What if the boil was not an adult, but he was 9 years old, who's roy labia minayin as well, that it has the halacha of an Hashem shifcha charupa. Tamad loymar v'ish. So the Gemara is assuming that he has zera. The Gemara is assuming that he has zera. Zok to Gemara ein chanami. Amarla yeshla, he has zera, but ve'ein moiled. His zera is impotent. Kitvua shaloy have yeshlish. Just like tvua that didn't grow a third yet, Rashi says, imata zaira, if you will plant it, eino mitameches, it won't grow. So kitvua shaloy have yeshlish tami. So he has zera, he can be boiled, but it won't lead to a conception. The vechizki yatana, v'chiyazid ish. So the pasuk says, "V'chiyazid ish al re'eu laharga b'arma me'mizbechi tikachedu lamas." So we look v'chiyazid ish mezid umasriya vein cotton mezid umasriya. I didn't prepare this, but I guess it means that an adult could be masriya, but not a cotton. Okay, we'll stop here. Hashem, or we mamshich to one. Yeah.